No one tells P. Diddy what to do. Like,
absolutely.
Who tells him what to do?
Clive Davis in the beginning. Oh. No, he didn't empower him. That his ass on the block. He gave him power. And all he had to do was diddle-dee-dee and diddle-dee-dum.
The relationship between Clive Davis and Diddy is interesting because when Diddy's 23 years old, he's making a name for himself. Clive gave him $15 million to start Bad Boy Records. And then later on, they did even a bigger deal where Clive gave him $50 million advance on future earnings. This is 5 years later in 1998. $6 million upfront payment, $700,000 annual salary, and a state-of-the-art recording studio. We're talking about $2 million recording studio. This is when he went after Faith Evans. He got Biggie in the early 90s. This is when it started. But there's a relationship with Clive. And it's interesting because Clive later on, they say something may have happened here because Shook said Clive taught him the bad habits.
They're part of the government. And I say that because that's why it was so easy to snatch Puffy down. And all the people that they can't say nothing because they're part of it too.
For decades, the music world has been a stage of curated images, red carpet smiles, award speeches, tales of talent, and relentless grind. But behind the glimmer, insiders have long whispered about a hidden machine fueled by control, fear, and unspoken rules. When Jaguar Wright spoke out, keeping every recording, it resonated not because it was shocking, but because it confirmed what many already sensed, but never dared to say. This time, her focus wasn't just on Sean Diddy Combs, she aimed higher, at Clive Davis, a figure whose power in music is almost mythic, shaping careers, trends, and opportunities across generations. According to Wright, Diddy didn't invent this system of leverage and secrecy, he inherited it, a student of Davis himself. This isn't about court rulings or hard evidence. It's about patterns, repeated stories, and the unsettling reality that some names remain untouchable while others vanish. And now, as Diddy faces legal storms once whispered about, the industry holds its breath. Who truly stands behind him, hoping their influence stays unspoken? When Sean Combs was ousted from Uptown Records in the early 90 seconds, his future seemed fragile, brilliant, ambitious, yet surrounded by skeptics, but Clive Davis intervened. A reminder that in this world, power is as much about mentorship and alliances as it is about talent. And those who understand the rules often control the game from the shadows.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So once again, why does diplomacy matter? It wasn't diplomacy that got me that award. It was honesty. So understand this. You can save your race shame and your race-baited conversations. Ain't nobody worried about y'all. We got serious work to do. And after talking to my good friend Paperwork today, it looks like there's some things that I need to make sure that we alert Cash Patel's office about. We think it's of great concern. And I'm sure Mary Flynn would agree with me. She knows how dangerous Diddy can be, and with Clive Davis being at the heart of it all, I'm sure that makes it even more egregious. So yeah, last time I checked, I'm American. Prove I'm not, and then have a problem with it.
By then, Clive Davis was already legendary, a kingmaker whose belief could open doors and whose doubt could quietly end careers. Public records show he provided the funding and distribution that propelled Bad Boy Records to success after Diddy's departure from Uptown, and Diddy never shied from acknowledging it, praising Davis on major stages, calling him a mentor, a guiding force, a man who saw what others overlooked. On the surface, it was a textbook success story, a young visionary backed by an industry titan. But Jaguar Wright claims it went far deeper than music. She alleges Davis didn't just teach Diddy how to run a label, he schooled him in the mechanics of power itself, how to shape narratives, amass leverage, and protect yourself by making sure others always have more to lose. In her telling, this was the hidden curriculum of influence, a lesson in control that runs through the industry, quietly shaping who rises, who falls, and who is never questioned.
They just know he got the budget. He go to LA, he talk to Clive, he come back with the bread. Apparently, he has this man's confidence. Yeah, I'm sure that man was very confident with his penis in his mouth. You know what I'm saying? Clive is a whole freak.
You think Clive put him on to all?
I know. Clive, that's what he do. Queen Clive. Long may she reign in hell.
When 50 Cent...
Don't nobody want to talk about why R. Kelly's bus was parked in Clive Davis's driveway, why his tour bus was parked in Clive Davis's driveway at the house where the down between Chris and Rihanna. Don't nobody want to talk about why it was filled with video girls who were being trafficked. And he was never questioned by Me Too. Why ain't nobody from Me Too saying anything? They had so much to say about Harvey Weinstein, who's now all his charges is being dropped. So much for their investigation. Guess it was a little paper thing. I don't know. These bad talkative. They was on the news every goddamn day. And then they brought that witch McGowan, fresh off a breakup with Marilyn Manson, feeling low, gave her a cause. You like the with Harvey Weinstein, right? That's real bad.
In this telling, Bad Boy was never just a business venture, it was a classroom, and Diddy the student, absorbing lessons that would define his approach for decades. While these are allegations, they help explain why so many insiders see his rise as deliberate rather than accidental, why his strategies appeared unusually calculated from the very start, and why his influence seemed to extend far beyond the music itself, a reflection of a system of power and control learned from one of the industry's most formidable figures.
So no one tells P. Diddy what to do, like...
Absolutely.
Who tells him?
Clive Davis, in the beginning. No, he didn't empower him. That ass on the block. He gave him power. And all he had to do was diddle-dee-dee and diddle-dee-dum. Like, he wasn't gonna tell Gene and them that's how he was getting the money. Right. Let's be real about that. You think he was going to admit to these we went to school with, who essentially he asked to come to make his G official? Like you heard him say, Christopher Williams Street, Pete Rock, I'll Be Short. They could. You know what I'm saying? Gene Deal. Like, ain't nobody looking at how Puff positioned himself. There was a wall of protection and talent and brilliance around him. Nobody had to look at him for real, for real. And the truth is nobody did. Everybody laughed and joked about him dancing like a in all them goddamn videos. Twirling around in circles and this wild, like, you know. So I'm just saying, they didn't know, and he wasn't telling them. They just know he got the budget. He go to LA, he talk to Clive, he come back with the bread. Apparently, he has this man's confidence. Yeah, I'm sure that man was very confident with his penis in his mouth. You know what I'm saying? Clive is a whole freak.
You think Clive put him on to all?
I know. Clive, that's what he do. Queen Clive. Long may she reign in hell.
When 50 Cent
Don't nobody want to talk about why R. Kelly's bus was parked in Clive Davis's driveway, why his tour bus was parked in Clive Davis's driveway at the house where the between Chris and Rihanna. Don't nobody want to talk about why it was filled with video girls who were being trafficked. And he was never questioned by Me Too. Why ain't nobody from Me Too saying anything? They had so much to say about Harvey Weinstein, who's now all his charges is being dropped. So much for their investigation. Guess it was a little paper thin. I don't know. These bitches was mad talkative. They was on the news every goddamn day. And then they brought that witch Rose McGowan, fresh off a breakup with Marilyn Manson, feeling low, gave her a cause.
For years, whispers about Clive Davis circulated quietly within the industry, rarely hitting headlines but persistent in insider circles, stories of favors, influence, and relationships that extended far beyond contracts or boardrooms. When Davis later opened up in his memoir about his personal life, speaking of male partners while deliberately shielding their identities, the speculation only deepened. Some insiders suggested that one of those protected relationships touched Diddy in the early days of Bad Boy Records, fueling claims that the financial support and industry access he received came with unspoken expectations. Though never proven, these allegations were echoed over time, with figures like Suge Knight hinting that Diddy had been shaped by manipulation early on and later mirrored that behavior when he rose to power. Jaguar Wright reinforces this perspective, arguing that the cycle of abuse in the industry is often generational, and that survival sometimes teaches its victims to become enforcers rather than targets, passing lessons of control from one era to the next.
And let Bank of America go out of business. We can't let these guys go out of business. Is Biggie part of the too big to fail, or are there people way above Diddy that are part of the too big to fail that they'll always be protected, specifically when you say higher ups?
Well, you got to look at it like this. Puffy is one of those black guys is probably more fear of white America than black America. We feel in black America, we pass all that. They can't get to him. In white America, you got to show them some respect. Are they going to spank him on his ass? Especially now, because when you really look at it, Ciroc was a great company that gave Puffy opportunity. I think he gave him $1,000 to get in, and then he was able to make all this money, and then he wanted more and more and more. And the first time they didn't allow him to throw a tantrum, he hit him with the stuff that people hit him with probably. So he told him, "Hey, you racist, you motherfuckers." They say, "Yeah." You know, I also say that I was raised in Compton, but I was made in Vegas at UNLV. UNLV taught me the opportunity to be around people that was business-minded, that was loyal, that was happy. And that's where my lessons came from. So I understand business better than most people. That's why I ain't never been in no damn videos. So at the end of the day, when Puffy went at the alcohol business, I used to play football with John Kennedy Jr. almost every weekend. One of the best guys I ever met and hung out with. We used to play football. But that being said, he come from a bootlegger family. Most of the big guys come from a bootlegger family. You know, the alcohol before it was legal. These guys is smart enough to be humble and wide enough to be aggressive tough. So when Puffy challenged him, and they knew Puffy lived in the glass house, his house came tumbling down because those rocks was coming through that glass house. For the simple fact, when he called those guys racist, and he knew he had those secrets, those hidden secrets, they ain't just found out that the things Puffy was doing. They ain't just found out how the industry is. They haven't just found out how they pick and choose. They're part of the government. And I say that because that's why they were so easy to snatch Puffy down. And all the people that Puffy, they can't say nothing because they're part of it too.
There is no verified evidence proving these claims, yet what unsettles many is how the same story keeps resurfacing, told by different voices over decades with strikingly similar details. It prompts a troubling question. If these whispers were entirely false, why have they never vanished? And why does the narrative persist with such consistency across time and sources?
Davis, of course, everybody knows the music mogul, record executive, and everything. And when that story came out, what Suge Knight said about Puffy and everything, Clive Davis's people said, "Oh, Suge Knight's a disgraced felon." And then it got me thinking. I remember 20-some years ago, David Stern said the same thing about Tim Donahue, the referee who betted on games and got in trouble, and out of his mouth was, "Well, he's a felon." And they like to throw that word around to say that people who got convicted of something serious, that they can't ever come back into society, that they can't ever have another opportunity. That's a nice way of brushing them off. However, they never addressed the elephant in the room. And so when Clive Davis said that about Suge Knight, Suge was talking about the 90s, talking about what he heard, what he knew, what was making the rounds. You know, I tell anybody this, Puffy wasn't some great producer or composer. He wasn't Teddy Riley. He may have grew up in certain areas as Teddy Riley. He wasn't Teddy Riley. So how did he get a credit of a $70 million credit limit on Arista Records to start Bad Boy? You do the wonder and the math. How you get a credit limit when you're not a producer, you're not a singer, you're not a rapper, and you're kind of comical with your dance routines. So you tell me what happened. Something strange. Tim Donahue, NBA rep. Yes, obviously, betting on games. Rasheed Wallace addressed that and all that, and all the bookies, etc. And he did his time. We always look at the NBA, know stuff be fixed and fake. We know superstar people have been getting calls for years. We know that they want a market to be a market. And those who remember 20 years ago, the Lakers' last run when Shaq and Kobe, and it was Carmelo and Gary Payton and Phil Jackson, with Derek Fisher and Rick Fox. What came out of David Stern's mouth? He said, if I had my way, it'd be LA versus LA. It's about market to market. Yeah. See, when people tell the truth, I don't care if they have been convicted of something or not. Facts is facts. That has nothing to do with the reality. But I noticed that Clive Davis, like David Stern, like to throw that felon word on people to offset from talking about the reality. When we put some stuff together, you don't have to be Einstein or a genius to see, or Dr. Charles Drew or something to put it together, or George Washington Carver to see where the nut is coming from, where it grows. You can see it right there in front of your eyes. There's no element of surprise there.
In her account, none of this was hidden or unexpected. It was visible in plain sight. When Jaguar Wright said the recordings were kept, she meant it literally, describing what she believes was a deliberate system of control. According to her, the documentation was intentional, capturing private moments, conversations, and situations where individuals were exposed, not for nostalgia or entertainment, but as leverage. More critically, she argues this tactic was learned, not invented, suggesting Diddy inherited the understanding that information is power from those who came before him. Jaguar points to Clive Davis as someone who, in her view, recognized the value of recorded secrets long before Diddy ever did. She stresses that the unease surrounding Davis today is not about direct accusations, but about exposure, the possibility of history being revealed without safeguards. No public evidence places Clive Davis on any recording, and no such material has surfaced. But fear does not depend on proof. It thrives on possibility. The mere chance that such records could exist is enough to unsettle powerful figures. And according to Wright, that is why Davis is watching Diddy's unraveling closely, not with loyalty or sympathy, but with concern, because when one shield falls, everyone connected to it becomes exposed.
Because
When
I've always thought
entertainment-
black people started music, just me.
Well, the thing is we did. We were the culture. The Jews and the Italians monetized it and started setting prices. That's why Clarence Avant was so important to the black community in entertainment. Because he was the go-between for the talent to the powers that be. He understood what their objective was and he knew what his people needed, and he created that balance, which is why Clive Davis hated him so much. See, people don't want to. Did y'all see when they interviewed Dapper Dan about Diddy?
I haven't seen that one. Please.
They ran into Dapper Dan in Harlem and they asked him what he thought about what was going on with Diddy and if he knew Diddy. And I love Dapper Dan for this. He said, I grew up with his parents. I knew his parents. He said, and what's going on with him has been going on long before him. Now, his father was a government snitch and a bad actor in the criminal world altogether. The woman that they're saying is his mother was a prostitute, a whore. But there's whispers in the streets of Harlem that Diddy's mother isn't alive. Not his biological mother, but that woman is his aunt.
Whoa.
There are whispers.
Wait a minute.
There are whispers. Diddy's story is so convoluted, but nobody really likes talking about who he was before he became Puff.
As lawsuits and allegations around Diddy surfaced, a recurring pattern emerged. Private parties and late-night gatherings where normal rules seemed suspended. Former insiders described these spaces as meticulously controlled, surrounded by wealth, influence, and subtle pressure, where boundaries blurred and recordings were allegedly made. Jaguar Wright asserts that this system did not originate with Diddy. It was an industry model passed down to enforce silence through mutual compromise. In her account, Clive Davis recognized this dynamic long before Diddy, allegedly teaching him how to craft environments where guests guarded secrets not out of fear of punishment, but because exposing them would destroy themselves. While no verified evidence links Davis directly to these events, whispers from former employees describe a culture in which, after a certain hour, the illusion of safety vanished and influence became absolute.
Clive Davis and Diddy's interesting because when Diddy's 23 years old, he's making a name for himself. Clive gave him $15 million to start Bad Boy Records. And then later on, they did even a bigger deal where Clive gave him $50 million advance on future earnings. This is 5 years later in 1998. $6 million upfront payment, $700,000 annual salary, and a state-of-the-art recording studio. We're talking a $2 million recording studio. This is when he went after Faith Evans. He got Biggie in the early 90s. This is when it started. But there's a relationship with Clive. And it's interesting because Clive later on, they say something may have happened here because Shook said Clive taught him the bad habits. And later on, Clive comes out and says the following. Yes, record mogul Clive Davis has identified as being by. He publicly revealed in his memoir, this is not allegedly, he said it, the soundtrack of my life. At the age of 80, he also discussed in an interview with Katie Couric, expressing the hope that his coming out would contribute to greater understanding of bipolaridity.
This system helps explain why so many powerful figures remain silent, because in this world, silence is survival, and speaking out can mean self-destruction. Whether the claims are true or not, they reflect a broader perception that the music industry often values loyalty to power over truth. Not every artist complied quietly, some fought back, and the consequences could be severe. TLC's confrontation with Clive Davis stands as a well-known example. After selling millions of records, they reportedly received shockingly low compensation, prompting a direct demand for answers and respect at Arista Records. Jaguar Wright frames this as part of a wider pattern, suggesting that artists who challenge authority are labeled difficult, ungrateful, or unstable, their careers stalled, opportunities vanished, and in extreme allegations, some even lost their lives. While unproven, these stories endure because the industry has rarely been held fully accountable. In this narrative, Clive Davis embodies the apex of influence. Diddy, the student who learned the rules, and the artists, the disposable pieces within a system where power, control, and survival intersect, revealing the depth of mistrust that underpins the industry.
And good afternoon, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We're coming back on the air because the judge has just sentenced Sean Diddy Combs to 4 years in prison. He was found guilty over the summer on 2 counts of transportation to engage in in connection with his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura and another woman, but was acquitted on more serious charges that could have sent him to prison for life. Let's get right to our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, who's been following this trial from the beginning. He joins us from outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. So, Aaron, we just got the verdict right there. We know that Combs himself spoke to the judge. The judge responded. Lay out the sentencing here and what went down in the courtroom today.
She said he has to stay. This was a very long sentencing hearing, which Sean Combs himself, once larger than life, was left begging for mercy, standing at the defense table, telling the judge that he's a changed man, apologizing for his behavior. But that request for a lenient sentence of time served was rejected by the judge, Arun Subramanian, who said it was insufficient to send the kind of message that he wanted to send, that violence against women must be met with real accountability. And so he sentenced Sean Combs to 4 years in prison. That's not as much as federal prosecutors here wanted. They wanted 11 years in prison, reminding the judge that Sean Combs has a penchant for violence and abuse, pointing to 2016 hotel security video showing Combs attacking Cassie Ventura. Combs says he knows that video intimately. He apologized to Cassie Ventura. The judge said 11 years was unreasonable, but 4 years is just the right amount, the judge said, to send a message to Sean Combs, to victims of domestic violence, that their accounts will be taken seriously.
Aaron, thanks. Let's go ahead and bring in a trial attorney and ABC News legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, we just heard Aaron lay out right there that the defense was hoping for 14 months in credit for time served. The prosecution wanted 11 years. So this is somewhere in the middle. Is this verdict what you expected?
It actually was not what I expected, and this is why I say that. The probation report said anywhere from 70 to 87 months, much higher than the 50 months that the judge gave. And understand, and I'll try to break down the math as best as I can, the judge understands the math of how this all works. With 50 months in the federal system, you only do 85% of that. So you take away about 8 months or so, that's 42 months. And don't forget that Sean Combs has already been sitting in MDC, the jail here in Brooklyn, New York.
Diddy's legal troubles have shifted everything. The shield that once protected him is weakening, lawsuits are public, investigations ongoing, former allies stepping back, and in a world built on influence, when one powerful figure loses protection, others take notice. Jaguar Wright suggests Clive Davis's concern is not about wrongdoing, but about exposure. If Diddy documented it all, his downfall could unravel more than a single reputation. It could threaten an entire era of unchecked power. Davis survived decades by controlling narratives. Yet even the strongest stories crack when secrets surface. And according to Wright, this moment feels different, the silence heavier, the fear tangible. For years, the industry operated on unspoken rules. Do not question, do not challenge, do not reveal what sustains the system. Clive Davis embodied its apex, Diddy its evolution, and Wright the voice refusing to stay silent. True or not, her claims have forced a conversation long avoided. Because if power was built on secrets, and if those secrets were recorded, accountability is inevitable. The fall of one man is never isolated. It touches those who taught him, those who protected him, and those now afraid to be named. And as the spotlight remains fixed on Diddy, one question lingers in the shadows. Who else will it reach?